and his wife Cold War for the 30th day. His wife said that he wanted to travel with me to ease the feelings. A landing but ID card broken. Cell phone smashed. Banished deserted island self-sustaining. Some people asked her is not too much, but she stroked her belly with a disdainful face. Is not to blame for his own too petty. I just IVF baby want to leave a back to the speech chain. He clamored for a divorce. There are still 8 months the child will be born. There is fresh water and food on the deserted island. Cannot starve him. Let him eat a little bit of suffering only. 8 months later, his wife, satisfied with her newborn son in her arms, asked her assistant for the first time in her life. After all this time, he still hasn't clamored to go back to his home country. Unbeknownst to her, I died on my first day on the deserted island. Point 1 When I opened my eyes again, my spirit appeared in the labor and delivery room of my wife, Cynthia Snow. A pale Cynthia Snow held her baby gently, her eyes full of love. Her bamboo horse, Liam Yanching, wiped Cynthia Snow's sweaty forehead and couldn't stop giving thanks. Snow. Thank you. We have a son. I was a bit shaken. So I had been dead for so long. Her and Liam Yanching's children were born, and as soon as Cynthia Snow was pushed out, a group of people surrounded her to celebrate the birth of her child, releasing confetti cannons and stuffing cash envelopes. Snow. This child is so adorable. He's just like a combination of you and Liam Yanching, and he's going to be such a handsome man when he grows up. I'm sure he'll grow up to be a big handsome guy. These people used to call me brother-in-law with every word. And they were outraged that Cynthia Snow's IVF baby was wrong, and they scolded Liam Yanching for pretending to be a baby. It's true that they were only flattering me because I'm Cynthia Snow's husband. Cynthia Snow smiled with her lips, but her eyes looked towards the end of the corridor from time to time, and absent-mindedly picked up her cell phone to look at it again. Then frowned and asked the assistant, "Didn't I ask you to buy him a new cell phone? How come he hasn't contacted me in the past few months, and hasn't made a fuss about coming back?" The assistant lied without changing his face. "Mr. Jiang always curses you and Mr. Moo, saying that he doesn't want to have communication with you." The crease between Cynthia Snow's eyebrows deepened. Stubborn and unreasonable. His temper is too stubborn. You tell him. I've had the baby. Mission accomplished. If he calls to apologize sincerely and is willing to be this child's godfather, they'll pick him up and bring him back home. I smiled to myself. She doesn't realize that I'm long dead. 9 months ago, Cynthia Snow gave up me and her baby to make room for her and Liam Yanching's IVF baby. She said Liam Yanching has a short life expectancy and wanted to give Liam Yanching a legacy. I was disheartened and filed for divorce. Cynthia Snow, who had been in a cold war with me for a month, took the unprecedented initiative to talk to me and offered to go out for a trip to repair our relationship, and then beat up IVF baby's child when she came back. I believed her, but she left me on a deserted island to die a violent death. Returning to his senses, Liam Yanching pitifully said, "Cynthia Snow, if Jiang Heng returns to China, he won't beat me up again, right? It's okay to hurt me, but don't hurt our child." He lowered his head to adjust his angle, specifically revealing the tiny scar on the corner of his forehead. This scar was intentionally hit by a wall when Liam Yanching provoked me after I learned about Cynthia Snow's IVF baby. Because of this incident, Cynthia Snow hated me, thinking that I even want to bully terminally ill patients. Cynthia Snow was heartbroken, and said in a bad mood, "If he dares to touch you father and son, I'll let him never come back." The crowd burst into laughter. Cynthia Snow, you are still as protective of Yanching as before. Now that the baby is born, I remember that you and Liam Yanching used to be in an arranged marriage. So it's good to be together. Yes. Xiao Shui. A child needs a complete mother and father's love. Jiang Heng is so petty and extreme. I am really afraid that he will do something to the child. Cynthia Snow did not respond to this. She just clenched her fingers and asked her assistant, Did you send the message? How did he reply? The next second, Cynthia Snow's cell phone on her side rang. Cynthia Snow's eyes flickered, thinking it was me. And she said smugly, "Jiang Heng, you finally." The words on the other side made her freeze in place. "May I ask if you are the wife of Master Jiang Heng, and whether you have time to come to St. Patrick's Cathedral to take a trip?" Cynthia Snow asked. "What baptismal necklace?" She sighed and said, "A year ago, Mr. Jiang came to our temple and wished for his seriously ill wife. Lucky, one step at a time. When he came to return the wish, he said his wife had recovered and was pregnant. Our abbot said that he was blessed with a baptismal necklace to wish his child lucky. But we have not been able to contact him for months. When Cynthia Snow was diagnosed with advanced heart failure, I tried every means to treat her, even begged the heavens for mercy and kowtowed for Cynthia Snow until my head was bleeding. Later, I was so happy to return the wish, thinking that I would be able to get through this difficult time and see the light at the end of the tunnel. But in the end, I lost everything and had nothing. I covered the sharp pain in my heart and laughed to myself. It turns out that an artificial heart can also hurt this much. The crowd could not help but froze. I cannot imagine that Jiang Heng is so affectionate. When you heart failure, we thought he was afraid to take responsibility to run away. It seems to be a misunderstanding of Jiang Heng. Cynthia Snow suddenly also covered the heart. Shell teeth biting red lips. After slowing down, she sneered. "No need. What baptismal necklace? Throw it away," said. Hung up the phone. She lowered her eyes, gritted her teeth and said, "This is the difference between Jiang Heng and Yanqing. Jiang Heng can only do superficial things, but Yanqing directly used her life to save me. If it wasn't for Yanqing's heart replacement, I would have died long ago. Yanqing is dying because of this. But Jiang Heng only knows petty jealousy, and even divorces because of a little thing." My mouth was bitter. I was the one who donated Cynthia Snow's heart. The doctor told me that even if I spend a high price to transplant an artificial heart for myself and take medication every day to maintain it, I can only live for another 1 or 2 years with the current technology. I didn't regret it. I was glad I still had time. But when I woke up from my coma, I found Cynthia Snow tearfully thanking Liam Yanqing for his contribution. I defended myself, but she accused me of pathetic imitation, and it wasn't until Cynthia Snow got pregnant that our relationship eased. Because when Liam Yanqing came to visit Cynthia Snow, he covered his heart and said despondently, "Unfortunately, I won't be able to live much longer. I'm afraid I won't be able to have my own child, and I won't be able to see your child either." Cynthia Snow then decided to leave Liam Yanqing with no hesitation. This is what led to the tragedy that followed. Listening to Cynthia Snow's accusation, the crowd looked at each other and the air froze. In order to ease the atmosphere, everyone heckled and specifically turned on the TV. "Snow, you just gave birth. Don't be too angry. Relax your mood. Who knows? It happened to play to a news. Drone patrol found a skeleton male body on a deserted island in the Pacific Ocean. This is the drone technology." Cynthia Snow looked up sharply, her pupils shrinking suddenly. "Which deserted island?" Someone said weakly. "Snow. I heard that the island you brought to Jiang Heng seems to be near these coordinates." Cynthia Snow's brows wrinkled to the point where they could tie themselves in knots. Liam Yanqing's eyes flashed, and his big hand stroked Cynthia Snow's back. "There are a lot of similar islands, right? But this skeleton is it's very complete. Like a model from a hospital." Cynthia Snow returned to her senses and let out a cold laugh. Hee hee. Jiang Heng pretended to have a heart condition to deceive people before. Now he even found a model of a skeleton to scare me. He really has the leisure to do so. It's me who let him enjoy himself too much. Turning her head, she instructed her assistant, "In the future, you are not allowed to agree to Jiang Heng's unreasonable requests. I've already said that I'll just give him the basic survival supplies. But you're still fooling around with him. The assistant nodded his head in a cold sweat. I knew why he was weak. After throwing me to the deserted island, Cynthia Snow did not hesitate to leave by helicopter. Physically and mentally exhausted. My artificial heart was overloaded. I just took out my medicine and tried to take it. It was this assistant who kicked my life-saving medicine over and rolled it down into the sea, and said with a look of disgust, "Mr. Cheen is right. You are really a drama queen. You are still acting out a heart attack. You just live out your life on this deserted island. Mr. Cheen is going to have a baby with Mr. Moo. How could he get you back?" After saying this, he left the deserted island with everyone in disgust. In the end, I scratched the ground in pain. My 10 fingers were bloody, my heart stopped beating. And I died miserably in a foreign country. The body was exposed to the wind and rain, and the raptors tore it apart. Now that I think about it, the feeling of my heart being clutched seems to be right in front of my eyes, and Cynthia Snow's mood has somehow turned for the worse. With a cold expression, she rolled over, pulled the covers over her body, and began to rush the guests. "All of you get out. I'm tired." Everyone looked at each other and walked out of the hospital room. Only Liam Yanching stayed behind, coaxing the baby and gently holding Cynthia Snow's hand, which had been placed outside the covers to administer the hangnail. Because it was a natural childbirth, Cynthia Snow could be discharged from the hospital in a couple of days, and Liam Yanching followed Cynthia Snow home, holding the baby in his arms and assuring her pitifully, "Snow, I know that you've found a postpartum doula to take care of the baby, but after all, I'm the baby's father, and it's my responsibility to take care of you and the baby. I have the responsibility to take care of you, mother and child." Fear that she did not agree, he hastened to find complimentary, "I am very measured. Will not move the things of the family, not to mention will not be Jiangheng found that I came to your home." Cynthia Snow clutched the chain of the bag with her fingers so hard that they turned white, a little tangled. Liam Yanching then covered his chest, with tears in his eyes, said weakly, "Snow, I will not live long. I do not have many chances to accompany you, mother and son. Can you give me this chance?" After a long time, Cynthia Snow finally slowly nodded her head, looking at Liam Yanching with a face of sly triumph. I lowered my head and smiled bitterly. In the past, Cynthia Snow and I had agreed that no matter what, we would not bring outsiders into our little home. But now we let Liam Yanching enter our home. Sure enough, he was never the exception. As soon as we opened the door, the family dog jumped up to welcome Cynthia Snow, who barked and barked warily as she realized there was a stranger, shielding Cynthia Snow behind her. Cynthia Snow frowned at the sound of the dog's barking and cried out, "Lucky, be good." Liam Yanching, however, smiled gently, his smile not reaching the bottom of his eyes. "It's okay, Snow. I love puppies too," he said. He knelt down and rubbed Lucky's head. Lucky has always been docile. Growling is just his way of scaring people off. So he didn't bite Liam Yanching's hand. Cynthia Snow couldn't help but sigh. "Yanching, you are still as kind as before." Cynthia Snow sighed. "Yanching, you're still as kind as ever." Only I could see clearly that Liam Yanching's hand was holding a handful of yellowish-white dog hairs, and how much it hurt Lucky. Hearing Lucky let out an airy sound of pain, Cynthia Snow's face changed, and she was instantly annoyed. "It's just that this dog is the same as his owner. Both are white-eyed wolves that can't be bred." She pulled Liam Yanching and carried the baby away. Lucky was still squatting in the doorway, biting the bouncy ball I used to play with him, seemingly waiting for me. Although Lucky was only a small dog, he was rescued by Cynthia Snow and me during our relationship. At that time, he was abandoned at birth, and Cynthia Snow and I raised him overnight with a little bit of milk, just like our own children. He didn't know that his father was never coming back. Upstairs, Cynthia Snow left the child in the care of the postpartum doula and called the housekeeper to give her detailed instructions. Uncle Joe, Yanqing is gluten-free and doesn't eat onions, ginger, or garlic, so tell the kitchen to pay attention to that. Also, the bed sheet and quilt cover, he only sleeps in Egyptian cotton, otherwise he will get a rash. Cynthia Snow recited in a rambling manner, remembering Liam Yanqing's preferences incredibly solidly, as if they had lived together for a long time. I was jealous of her and Liam Yanqing's childhood relationship, but now it seems I thought too little of it. Liam Yanqing didn't know this. And on the pretext of going to the bathroom, he quietly entered the bedroom of Cynthia Snow and I. Lucky, seeing that a stranger had entered Mom and Dad's room, tilted his head and followed Liam Yanqing upstairs. Liam Yanqing looked at her with a mocking expression. Yanqing looked at the wedding photo of Cynthia Snow and I on the table with a mocking look on his face, and picked up the marker on the table to smear it on my face. Liam Yanqing was shocked when he realized that Lucky was biting his pants leg. In the next second, he kicked him with a violent expression. Lucky was only a 10-pound puppy, and was kicked directly to the wall by this heavy kick and fell down. Its limbs twitched a few times, blood spreading from the corners of its lips, and it wailed a few times. With my eyes wide open, I jumped to Lucky's side, but I could only penetrate its body again and again. Liam Yanqing's pale and thin face revealed a sense of madness. He gave a mocking smile. Loyal dog, huh? Then I'll send you to meet your master in heaven. I froze in place. Liam Yanqing actually knew that I was dead. Could it be that the assistant was one of his people? I couldn't help but clench my hands into fists as I recalled the image of the assistant's disgust for me and sparing no effort to discredit me. Just then, Cynthia Snow, who heard the commotion, walked into the house. At a glance, she saw Lucky, who was still twitching delicately under the wall. Root point 3 Liam Yanqing immediately pretended to cry. I'm sorry, Snow. The puppy bit me, and with a pain in my heart, I accidentally kicked it, so it's all my fault for being careless. Is the puppy going to be okay? Cynthia Snow pursed her lips and withdrew her gaze from Lucky with difficulty. I'm glad he's okay. How are you feeling? Where did he bite you? Pets are full of germs. They're not good for children. I've been wanting to have him sent away for a long time. Now you've been a big help. With a disgusted look on her face, she asked the housekeeper to take the dog to the hospital for treatment. But Liam Yanqing was not too satisfied. His lips curled. But he quickly adjusted his expression and tugged on Cynthia Snow's sleeve. It's good that the dog is fine. If Jiang Heng finds out, he'll probably peel off a layer of my skin. I can't even compensate him even if I die. Those who don't know will think that I have bullied him. But Cynthia Snow's eyes showed her heartache, and softly coaxed. If he dares to do that, I will let him know that life is worse than death. Liam Yanqing paused and tentatively asked, Snow, my parents want to see more of Xiaobao. Why don't you accompany me home tomorrow to meet the elderly? Cynthia Snow nodded her head. Of course. The child will have to be given to the 2 old people to raise in the future. Liam Yanqing's chest was heaving violently. He reached out to grab Cynthia Snow's hand, and pouted. Little Snow, why are you getting more and more angry with me? Cynthia Snow directly avoided, and said coldly, the guest room has already been packed. Please go to sleep. In the past few days, Little Treasure has been making a lot of noise, and you haven't been resting well. You are not resting very well. But it was Cynthia Snow who had a hard time sleeping all night. She took out her cell phone and opened my chat box from time to time. When she realized that my message was still 8 months old. When she invited me to travel abroad and I replied with the word yes, she felt uneasy. I worried about Lucky's health, but my soul couldn't stray too far from Cynthia Snow, so I could only stare at Lucky's dog treats and toys in disbelief. In the next moment, Cynthia Snow suddenly walked up to me. With a jolt in my heart, I noticed her crouch down and open a can of Lucky's favorite dog treats. Then opened my chat box. Jiang Heng, I'm done with things. Come back. Lucky misses you. Cynthia Snow gave into a rare weakness. And I didn't reply in seconds this time. I couldn't return her messages anymore. Just then, the butler opened the door and came back. Cynthia Snow looked at him empty-handed and asked, "Where's the dog?" The butler deliberated. 6 broken ribs. Inserted into the heart. Sent to the hospital, will not be able to. Miss. To be cremated. I have a sharp pain in my heart. When I first named the puppy, Cynthia Snow said gently, "Of course we have to call it Lucky. We are his mom and dad. Is the closest person in his little world. We can protect him for a lifetime, Lucky." It was only after a long time that she found her voice. "Ahoo, Uncle Joe. Please find me a dog that looks exactly the same." When Jiang-hun comes home and doesn't see Lucky in the next 2 days, he's sure to make trouble again. I was even more chilled. She was so rich that she could find a similar dog. But for our relationship, we can't find a substitute. The next day, Cynthia Snow was a little distracted on the way to Liam Yanqing's house. Even the child crying only perfunctorily patted. She pursed her lips and sent a message urging the housekeeper. "Still haven't found it yet." As soon as possible, when she raised her eyes again, Cynthia Snow was dumbfounded to see the arrangement of Liam Yanqing's house. 4 I looked at the scene in front of me and just felt funny. I only saw colorful ribbons decorated all around. There was a red carpet on the floor. The music of "I'm Marrying You Today" was playing outside the Bluetooth speaker. And the most sudden of all was the banner facing the front door. "Cynthia Snow, please marry me." Cynthia Snow's arms around the child tightened, and the child struggled and cried out. But Mew's father laughed and said, "Snow, you and Yanqing was originally arranged marriage, and that small family Jiang-hun door inappropriate household is not right. Now the child has been born. Is not it possible to marry Yanqing?" Liam Yanqing even directly kneeled down on one knee, took out a crystal diamond ring and said with deep emotion, "Xiao Shui, I know I can't live much longer, but I want to give my child a complete father's love, and I want him to know that he was born in love, not a nameless and unprofitable wild child. I beg you to marry me. I want to protect you and your son until the end of your lives." The crowd shouted in unison, "Say yes to him, marry him." My heart was bitter. Cynthia Snow, however, sank to her knees and knocked the diamond ring out of Liam Yanqing's hand. "Liam Yanqing, are you crazy?" Then without saying a word, she threw the baby into the hands of Liam Yanqing's parents and left in a huff. Liam Yanqing's face turned blue and white as he chased after them. He pulled Cynthia Snow's arm, his eyes red. "Why can't you marry me, Cynthia Snow? Rejecting you back then was just a moment of arrogance on my part. Didn't you get together with Jiang-hun just to piss me off? Now what the hell is wrong with you?" Cynthia Snow shook him off, her gaze unprecedentedly firm. "Jiang-hun will be angry. He is a jealous man, petty and stubborn. He's already angry that I IVF baby with you, and if he finds out that I agreed to your proposal, he'll never forgive me for the rest of his life." At those words, I was a bit surprised. Liam Yanqing clenched his back teeth and took a deep breath. In the next second, he covered his heart and said with great difficulty, "But, Xiao Shui, what if this is my last wish? I can't live much longer. I just ask you to promise me that you'll have a wedding with me. You can still be with Jiang-heng after I die. I won't hold you back for too long." Cynthia Snow's eyes flashed with struggles, and she subconsciously wanted to care for Liam Yanqing. Just when her hand was about to touch Liam Yanqing's heart, she woke up as if in a dream. "I'm sorry, Yanqing. Even if it's a last wish, I can't. I know you're my benefactor, but I've already made it up to you by giving you a child. And I still hope you won't cross the line." After saying that, she turned around and left. On the way home, her eyes were glued to the message that she had sent, but which had sunk into the sea, and Cynthia Snow annoyingly questioned the assistant who followed her. Are you sure that Jiangheng's cell phone can be connected to the internet? Why isn't he returning my messages? The assistant continued to lie. But the people who are on the deserted island told me that Mr. Jiang is fine. He is just ignoring you on purpose. Cynthia Snow was furious. I'm not good enough to accomplish anything. But I'm not good enough to do anything. Don't book a ticket for me. Hurry up. The assistant was a bit flustered and tried to stop it. But you are still in the month. Why don't you tell Mr. Moo about this? Cynthia Snow looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze and said icily, "What does it have to do with him? Who is your boss?" Soon, Cynthia Snow boarded the airplane. When she arrived at the island in a rage, my white bones were still exposed on the beach. And my clothes had long been tattered by the sea breeze. Cynthia Snow walked toward the deserted island beach shack. There was a click. She stepped on my calf bone without a care in the world. But her eyes were suddenly flashed by something. Unbelieving, she slowly turned back. Saw on the ring finger of the white bone, the silver-white men's wedding ring. 5 assistant gulped, trying to make a perfunctory pass. I can't imagine Mr. Jiang is so naughty, leaving such valuable things lying around. Obviously a clumsy lie. Cynthia Snow was relieved and murmured, "I knew it couldn't be him." Turning around, she bit her lip and said with some annoyance, "Damn Jiangheng, how dare you throw our wedding ring around? Didn't you say at first that you would never take it off for the rest of your life?" I lowered my eyes and smiled bitterly. At least, this promise, I also counted the fulfillment of it. When she walked to Beach Shack, she was a bit hesitant and took a deep breath before she pushed open the door. "Jiangheng, I came to pick you up." Cynthia Snow's pupils suddenly shrunk. The house was empty, with only a simple bed and table. There was no place to hide someone. Most importantly, everything had no traces of use and was dusty as if no one had ever lived here. This time, there was no need for the assistant to speak. Cynthia Snow just coldly grunted and said to the 10 or so bodyguards that followed right behind her, "Search. Even if you turn the entire island over to me and dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find Jiangheng." Unfortunately, the result was destined to disappoint her. Until the sun set, all of them were exhausted and panting, but they still couldn't find any trace of me. The assistant wiped her sweat and reminded General Manager Chin, "It's so late in the day, and the deserted island environment is so bad. Why don't you find a hotel to stay in first, and I'll supervise the search for Mr. Jiang for you." Looking at the impatient Cynthia Snow, I just felt some irony. Now she was in a hurry. "How come you didn't regret a bit when you didn't care about me for these 8 months and left me to my own devices?" Cynthia Snow shook her head and walked back to the hut a bit disoriented. She picked up the mineral water and Emery's meal ready to eat on the table and looked at them. Her face suddenly sank. "Ryan Lee, how dare you lie to me?" Ryan Lee, the very name of the assistant. Hearing Cynthia Snow speak to him in such an icy tone, he was so frightened that he couldn't say a word. Only to see Cynthia Snow snort coldly, "These Emery's meal ready to eat and water have all expired. Jiangheng doesn't usually live here, right?" Ryan Lee shivered and opened his mouth. This. Cynthia Snow, however, let out a light laugh. "I can't believe that you're quite kind to Jiangheng, that you've brought him off the island. Say, where is he hiding now?" I was a bit stunned, and a bitter smile pulled at the corner of my lips. When Cynthia Snow left, she specifically told Ryan Lee and the others not to let me go, and to make me suffer to learn my lesson. She didn't even think about it. Penniless and at the mercy of others, what qualifications do I have to let her assistant take me out of the island? As Ryan Lee's eyes rolled back in his head, a baby's cry suddenly sounded outside the door. There was also the hum of a helicopter in the air. The next second, The wooden door was slammed open, and Liam Yanching came in, dusty, holding the baby. The child in his arms had obviously been crying for a long time, and his little face was red. He coughed gently and looked at Cynthia Snow with pleading eyes. "Snow, even if you rejected me, but the child is innocent. He hasn't eaten for a day without you, and he keeps crying." Looking at him like that, those who didn't know thought he was an orphaned widower abandoned by a scummy woman. I never thought Liam Yanching would be so desperate as to make fun of his own child. The sound of the child's crying finally brought Cynthia Snow back to her senses. She took a deep breath. "Give me the child." For a while, the atmosphere in the room had a somewhat harmonious feeling. Liam Yanching took Cynthia Snow's shoulder seemingly unintentionally, and winked at Ryan Lee, who was standing at the side. "Special Assistant Lee, Snow needs to nurse. It's not good for you to stand here, right?" In a flash of lightning, Ryan Lee understood and nodded his head. Point 6 I knew that Liam Yanching was definitely up to something, but now I could only be detained in the beach shack, unable to see the outside scene. I only saw Liam Yanching softening and pampering himself. "Xiao Shui, don't worry. I won't do anything out of bounds in the future. They'll help you look for Jiang Heng together, and help you explain, and he'll definitely come around by then." This move of retreat for advance just poked Cynthia Snow's heart. Cynthia Snow couldn't help but be touched and said, "Yanching, I've wronged you. How can you come to such a dangerous place with such a weak body? I will send you father and son to the hotel to stay in a while." I just looked at the cozy picture of their family of 3 with a chill in my heart. After the child had eaten and drunk enough, they were finally ready to head out. With a glance, I realized that the bones of my corpse spread out on the beach were gone. It seemed that Liam Yanching had sent Ryan Lee to destroy the corpse. A subtle sense of despair surged through me. Why am I still wandering in the world, unable to commit to reincarnation? The next day, Cynthia Snow woke up with a start in the hotel, shouting, "Jiang Heng!" Don't! She sat up violently, waking up the baby beside her. Liam Yanching was lying on the other bed, asking in a daze, "Snow, what's wrong with you?" Cynthia Snow's face was ugly to the extreme, gently covering her heart. "I dreamt something happened to Jiang Heng." In the next second, she called Ryan Lee. "You come here right now and tell me where the hell Jiang Heng went." This time Ryan Lee came with a calm demeanor. He bowed and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chin. I'm afraid of moving your fetus. So I haven't dared to tell you that Mr. Jiang knocked out an employee while they were delivering supplies 5 months ago, and then escaped on a boat." Liam Yanching cooperated with the act and covered his lips and exclaimed, "Aw, I can't imagine that Jiang Heng ran away a long time ago. After so long, he didn't even contact and care about Xiao Shui for a single word. But it's really..." I suddenly clenched my fist, and my fingertips pierced into my palm. How can they manage to lie without any burden on their hearts after killing people? Cynthia Snow bites her lip. But he has no identity credentials whatsoever. Where can he go? Ryan Lee, however, was confident, and respectfully took out a file bag from his briefcase. "I've been looking for Mr. Jiang, and last night, the private investigator said that he had an eyebrow." Cynthia Snow couldn't wait to tear open the file bag, and instantly blackened her face when she saw the dozen of photographs inside. Her chest rose and fell violently. She was so angry that she couldn't see, and she clutched the photos with her fingers so hard that they turned white. Liam Yanching was not too big to add fuel to the fire. And he said in surprise, "Aw, it can't be. This person can't be Jiang Heng." In the next second, Cynthia Snow threw the photo in her hand like a heavenly flower and closed her eyes deeply. I was full of doubts and trembled when I saw the photos scattered on the ground. I saw that I was in an ambiguous posture with different women in the photos. Cynthia Snow was convinced, and snapped, "I shouldn't have come to him. I'm pregnant, and he's not paying attention to me while I'm having the baby, and he's even drinking." Liam Yanching could not stop his lips from rising and added, No way. It's just a few months. Jiangheng can't even stand the loneliness. If I were Jiangheng, I'd definitely be watching over you silently for fear that something would happen to you during the labor period. It was fine if she didn't say it. Once she said it, Cynthia Snow became even more irritated. Just then, her cell phone rang. She answered the phone in a bad mood. Hello, who is this? The person on the other end of the phone paused for a second, then said, I'm a staff member of the funeral parlor. Please come and collect the ashes of your beloved Jiangheng. Cynthia Snow's expression twisted for a moment, and the hand clutching the cell phone was so hard that it turned white. She didn't say anything for a few seconds, and the person on the other end of the line thought that there was something wrong with the quality of the call, asking repeatedly, Hello, can you hear me clearly? You are Jiangheng's lover, Cynthia Snow, right? We have finished burning Jiangheng's ashes and need you to come and collect them. Liam Yanqing tugged on Cynthia Snow's sleeve. And Cynthia Snow woke up like a dream, squeezing a few words out of her teeth. Yes. I'll go now. I looked at her with suspicion. Did Cynthia Snow believe that I was really dead? Did Cynthia Snow believe that I was really dead? Not long after, Cynthia Snow and the others arrived at the funeral home. The funeral parlor employee took out an urn and said to Cynthia Snow, This is Jiangheng's ashes. Please accept my condolences. Cynthia Snow reached out her hand to take it, but in the next second, she purposely disengaged her hand and let the urn fall to the ground with a thud. The earthenware jar fell into pieces and my ashes fell out, raising a cloud of dust and ash. The crunching sound was like a smash to my heart. I can't imagine that I would have to be insulted like this by Cynthia Snow after I die. The staff was dismayed. What are you? Cynthia Snow just stepped forward, her high heels stepping on my ashes, and asked the staff with a rather oppressive feeling. Still acting. How much did Jiangheng pay you? The staff member was unsure, but knew there was a misunderstanding, and immediately waved her hand to explain. Ms. Chin, you've misunderstood. I don't know Mr. Jiangheng. Cynthia Snow was just confident, hooking her lips in a smile. Then let me ask in another way. Who sent the bones for you to cremate? The staff was busy saying. An oriental man like his finger was about to point to Ryan Lee behind Cynthia Snow. Liam Yanqing interrupted at the right time, frowning. Snow, Jiangheng really is a bit over the top. Went a bit overboard. Actually tricking you by faking his death. Is he trying to get rid of you completely? Cynthia Snow was a bit mad. A hint of coldness flashed in her eyes. Good odd Jiangheng. Dare to do not dare to be. Actually faked his death to avoid me. Do you think you can avoid it? Let's see how I should punish you after I catch you. I just looked at Liam Yanqing, who was constantly smiling. I never imagined that he had such a deep heart, leading Cynthia Snow to misunderstand me step by step. However, Cynthia Snow and I don't even have the most basic trust between husband and wife. We will always come to this day. Liam Yanqing intentionally pinched the child in his arms and said weakly, Then I will accompany you to look for it, no matter how long it takes. Looking at the pale Liam Yanqing, and the weak child crying loudly, Cynthia Snow's eyes flashed a trace of intolerance. She bit her lip and said, Who has time to look for him? Yanqing, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gotten you guys involved in this strife. Your body can't stand the tossing and turning. Well, go back to the country this time. Seeing that Cynthia Snow was about to leave, the staff urgently called out to her. Wait. What about the ashes? Cynthia Snow's face was disdainful. Whatever. As flower fertilizer or as a flyer. It doesn't matter. I looked at the last trace of myself left in the world. I smiled to myself, pulling back the corners of my lips. What I want has always been simple. To have a child with the one I love and spend my life hand in hand. But in the end, I was alone. My soul followed Cynthia Snow back to China. When I returned home to the villa, The butler was holding a yellow-furred puppy that looked just like Lucky. He looked behind Cynthia Snow and asked with a smile, "Miss, didn't you go to pick up Mr. Jiang? Where is Mr. Jiang? Is he still making a fuss about not wanting to go back to China?" Cynthia Snow instantly froze, her long eyelashes lightly trembling. She opened her mouth, but couldn't make a sound. I also froze. This puppy really looks like Lucky, but the difference is that if Lucky saw Cynthia Snow, he would break away from the butler's arms and jump into Cynthia Snow's arms without a second thought. He would have jumped into Cynthia Snow's arms and asked her to stroke his little head. Seeing that Cynthia Snow didn't say anything, the butler tentatively asked, "Miss, could something have happened?" Liam Yanqing clenched his back teeth and snatched his words. It's true that Jiang Heng doesn't want to come back and is hiding. But Xiao Shui, she has already sent a lot of people to look for it. I think we will find it soon. After saying that, he hugged the child and was about to walk into the villa. The puppy in the housekeeper's hand even barked out. Liam Yanqing's eyes showed fierce light, turned his head to Cynthia Snow, and said, "Snow, you see." He thought that Cynthia Snow would indulge him like last time. But this time, Cynthia Snow said indifferently, "Forget it, Yanqing. You'd better not borrow our house, in case the dog bites you again, or Xiao Bao. It's not worth the loss." Liam Yanqing was dumbfounded, but Cynthia Snow didn't give him another chance to stay, and said to the driver, "Take young Master Mu and the others home." Cynthia Snow's eyes slightly looked at the innocent dog, and subconsciously reached out her hand to the dog, whose eyes were full of confusion. The puppy's eyes were full of ignorance, and she obediently let her pet it. Just as her fingertips were about to touch the puppy's forehead, Cynthia Snow withdrew her hand for some reason. She pursed her lips and said, "Uncle Joe, it's been hard on you. Help me keep Lucky well." That night, Cynthia Snow had a hard time sleeping all night. She tossed and turned and couldn't sleep, and suddenly called Ryan Lee. "Did you guys put out a wanted notice looking for Jiang Heng?" Ryan Lee was a bit puzzled and affirmed, "Yes, Mr. Chin. It's the same process as we used to use to find someone, the previous process." Cynthia Snow's process of collecting money from companies that owed her money was the same as the previous process. Cynthia Snow said in an inexplicable low growl as she rubbed her forehead. "Those bounty-holding men are not gentle and often injure people. You take down the wanted notice. Don't put Jiang Heng on the wanted list. What if someone does it to him for money? This way, you change it to a manhunt. Whoever finds him will be given 100,000, no, $1 million. But there mustn't be any wounds." Her words were sharp and fluent, as if she'd already thought of that. I know that Cynthia Snow still has feelings for me, and maybe she's still thinking about reuniting with me. But I'm already dead, and no matter how much she tries to make amends, it won't help. Ryan Lee heard Cynthia Snow's words, and remained silent for a moment before saying, "Yes, Mr. Chin, I'll do that." After all this, Cynthia Snow still seemed to feel uneasy inside. She purposely ran to the side of Lucky's kennel and shouted, "Lucky, Lucky." The puppy didn't understand his name and just looked at Cynthia Snow curiously. Cynthia Snow finally touched the puppy's head and laughed. "It's okay. I can teach you slowly. I can teach you slowly." At that moment, Liam Yanqing called and cried, "It's bad, Snow. The baby has prickly heat all over his body and the fever won't go down. What should we do?" Cynthia Snow was no longer sad. She put on her clothes and rushed to the hospital. When she was about to arrive at the hospital ward, two doctors who brushed past her were gossiping. "Last year, I did the only artificial heart surgery, and that person hasn't come to get the medicine for 8 months. 9 Cynthia Snow froze in place. Because there is only one case of artificial heart in China, and that is Liam Yanqing, and the person who has transplanted the artificial heart must take medicine every day. And if he doesn't take the medicine, he will die of heart failure very soon. Apparently, in her memory, Liam Yanching had been acting up, taking her medication on time to increase her guilt. She tugged at the doctor like a madwoman and forced her to ask, "What artificial heart surgery?" The doctor did not know why, and thought she was a patient who wanted to try this technology, and immediately advised, "Artificial heart surgery has a great deal of risk." That patient donated his heart to his wife, and implanted his own artificial heart. Only 8 months ago he did not come to the review to get the medication, and it is estimated that, alas, if you can wait, it is better to wait for another heart source. Cynthia Snow looked like she had been hit hard in the back of the head and was in a trance. The doctor left after a few reassuring words. At that moment, Liam Yanching, who had been waiting for Cynthia Snow, couldn't wait to peek his head out and saw Cynthia Snow standing in the corridor, and he hurriedly dragged Cynthia Snow to the NICU, pointing at the baby and crying, "It's all my fault. My mom didn't know that my son was allergic to seafood, and she gave him a spoonful of fish soup, and the baby was covered in redness and itchiness." The baby was red and itchy. I looked at Liam Yanching with cold eyes. Now I know better than anyone how black Liam Yanching's heart is. He was definitely behind this allergy. It is said that a tiger's venom will not eat its child, but he would do anything to steal Cynthia Snow. This child has been running around for days, and has been filled with allergic substances. She doesn't even have the strength to cry. She looks pitiful. In the past, Cynthia Snow's hardened heart would have turned to her fingers and she would have paid full attention to her baby. But now, Cynthia Snow just gave a perfunctory and then looked at Liam Yanching with probing eyes. "Yanching, I remember you have to review your artificial heart every month. This month, have you not reviewed it yet?" Liam Yanching was a bit flustered and explained, "This month is your due date, and there are so many things going on. How can I take care of myself? I know my own body well. It's okay to go for a review in a couple days." Cynthia Snow was non-committal and suddenly said, "So did you take your medication today? Look at how agitated you are. Doesn't your heart feel bad?" Liam Yanching took out a small bottle of medicine and Cynthia Snow grabbed the bottle and was about to take a closer look. Cynthia Snow grabbed the bottle and was about to take a closer look when Liam Yanching knocked it away and said with tears in his eyes, "Snow, our baby is still alive or dead and you are asking questions. Do you suspect me of faking? Fine. I'll go take a chest x-ray and clear my name." After saying that, he ran out. Cynthia Snow, with complicated eyes, followed him. The results showed that the thumping in his chest was indeed an artificial heart. The doctor said that his days were numbered and he had at most 1 or 2 months to live. Cynthia Snow immediately said guiltily, "I'm sorry, Yanching. It's because I've misunderstood you. How about this? I'll give you 20% of the company's shares as compensation. Okay. In the future, Xiao Bao will be able to inherit it as well." I frowned. I can't imagine that Liam Yanching can even find someone to fake for him in the hospital. No wonder Cynthia Snow trusts him to death. Upon hearing this, Liam Yanching's eyes lit up, and he immediately said, "I don't want anything, as long as your heart is in us father and son." Cynthia Snow smiled and said that she had to go out for a trip to have her lawyer draw up a transfer of equity. But turning her head, Cynthia Snow called a person's phone. The voice was too low for me to hear. I only saw the person with the word Dean written on his chestplate rush in, directly accessed the computer data, and said seriously, "Mr. Cheen, I can assure you that Liam Yanching's heart is not damaged in any way and belongs to him. As for the fake chest piece, I will penalize the relevant personnel and give you an explanation." 10 Learning this news, Cynthia Snow did not show an unexpected expression. It was just a bit out of control as she swept the things on the table away. With a dark gaze, like a hellish Shura, she gritted her teeth and said, "Liam Yanching, you dare to lie to me." Even I couldn't help but feel a little scared when I saw Cynthia Snow in this state. The next day, Cynthia Snow asked Liam Yancheng to come out and said she wanted to transfer the shares to him. Liam Yancheng specially grabbed a hairstyle and changed into a fashionable suit. However, he did not expect to be knocked out by Cynthia Snow when he went out. When he woke up again, Cynthia Snow had already transferred him to a basement. Looking at the various whips and knives hanging on the walls of the basement, I shuddered at what Cynthia Snow was up to. Next, I saw something I'll never forget. It only took an hour for Liam Yancheng to turn into a bloody man. Half of his ear was missing. His face was scratched, and there was not a single piece of flesh on his body. He fainted several times, only to be woken up by Cynthia Snow with a bucket of cool water. And Cynthia Snow's face was icy cold, and her voice was also cold to the bone. What? You still won't tell me where Jiangheng has been hidden by you? Next pet, I will take away your eyes. Liam Yancheng's eyes were dull and lost focus, and the fear of death permeated his body. He looked at the approaching Cynthia Snow, emotionally collapsed, and suddenly laughed crazily. Cynthia Snow. What are you pretending to be affectionate for now? I'm telling you, Jiangheng is dead. He died a long time ago. I'm telling you, Jiangheng is dead. He's long dead. His ashes are still crushed by your own hands and stepped into the mud with your feet. With just one sentence, Cynthia Snow's eyes blossomed with blood, and she went completely insane. She uncontrollably picked up a knife and plunged it directly into Liam Yancheng's throat, hissing, "You're lying. You're lying." After an unknown amount of time, Cynthia Snow came back to her senses as she looked at Liam Yancheng's poked and prodded body. She immediately went to the sink to rinse the blood from her hands, muttering, "It's too dirty. Jiangheng doesn't like me like this. I have to wash it off." Cynthia Snow managed to get herself primed and cleaned up and returned home, and at a glance, she saw the yellow-haired puppy squatting at the door. She laughed. "Why did I forget that I said I would teach you to understand your name so that Jiangheng wouldn't be angry when he came back? Lucky is a very smart puppy. In the past, Cynthia Snow and I taught him anything, whether it was shaking hands and spinning in circles, once and he would know it. But this puppy only tilts his head and looks at Cynthia Snow. When Cynthia Snow teaches him his name for the 18th time and gets no response, she stabs her fingertip deep into her palm and bleeds. Regret. Cynthia Snow. But the fur child we raised together will never come back. It'll never come back. Either. Cynthia Snow sat at home for the rest of the day with suppressed tyranny in her eyes. Even when the housekeeper called him for dinner, she didn't respond. Until the hospital called. Is Bao's parent right? Xiao Bao's allergy is severe. The heart load is too much. Sudden death. Has been resuscitated and died. You see when to take the child away to bring to the cremation. She responded casually like a puppet, grasping for just one key word. Cremation. Then I watched as she hurriedly booked a plane ticket to a foreign country. I watched as Cynthia Snow, who had always been a proud, powerful woman in the mall, fell to her knees in front of the funeral home staff. She grabbed the staff's pants leg and cried sobbingly, "Please. You give Jiangheng back to me. Give me back." Okay. The staff was bewildered. "Miss Qin, we have already scattered Mr. Jiang at sea according to your instructions." He looked like he remembered something and took out a crystalline object. "I haven't had a chance to give you his relics last time." Cynthia Snow looked at the men's wedding ring and suddenly shed 2 lines of tears. In the end, Cynthia Snow went back to China and set up a memorial plaque for me, and as I looked at her pale, pained face, there were no more waves in my heart. It was too late. Just when she was worshipping me, the police found her. Cynthia Snow, you are suspected of intentional homicide before the police could finish their sentence. Cynthia Snow smiled sadly, took out the fruit knife hidden in her sleeve, and accurately stabbed into the heart that belonged to me. When she was about to fall, she was still full of smiles. "Jiangheng, I've come to accompany you." The moment she fell, A pillar of light rose under my feet. Jiangheng's karma has been cleared in this life. He can step into the wheel of reincarnation and be reincarnated as a human being. I no longer hesitated and stepped into reincarnation. Finished. NBSP. 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 NBSP.